welcome to the Every Third Saturday podcast, number...
Somewhere.
Don't know, don't care.
You figure it out.
So today we've got me, and we got Eric,
As usual.
and we've got Amos.
Howdy.
And,
He just happened to be here. We
Yeah.
drug him in.
I exist.
he exists. So we kind of show about nothing today. We had no real topic in mind, except what's going on currently in the veterans world.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of chaos here, which doesn't help. I mean, you're talking about ping pong balls in the brain. I think you've tossed a couple of them over into my head, so now they're just zipping around in empty space up there.
Yeah, it's coming at us hot and heavy today.
Yeah, it is.
And that's the way we like it.
It is.
You know, it feels more productive that way, right?
Right, when you don't have anything on the calendar, but then you get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of like, I did one thing and the day was over. What happened?
Yeah, but you check off your list, right? One thing, but you got to take a moment to recognize all the things, those small interactions.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really what we do here. We're
Yeah.
all about those small micro transactions, those micro interpersonal incidents.
Life happens in the interruptions.
That's right.
There
That's
you
right.
go. There you go.
Mhm. That's right.
And so we were talking previous to coming on here about some things going on in St. Paul in the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of anxiety amongst veterans in Minnesota about how they're handling the budget negotiations. And the governor took the brunt of some of that. The other day, there was a gathering at the Capitol of veterans, about 800 veterans gathered to in support of veterans' causes and bills that are pending before the House and the Senate.
Yep.
And Governor Walz came to speak to that group, and it did not go very well.
Yeah, he about got booed off stage, I think. A couple of videos floating around of that.
So there's some hard feelings there from his vice presidential candidacy about
Yep.
some of the things he said about his service.
Yep.
That didn't turn out to be true necessarily, but I do, regardless of political leanings, I do think Governor Walz has been pretty good for veterans while he's been governor.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With the surplus in the budget and creating the post 9/11 service members fund. I mean, that didn't have to happen, right? I know I benefited from that. I think everybody sitting here probably put in an application for it and got something from it. So,
Yeah, I mean, as an organization, Every Third Saturday is apolitical. We don't get into the political mess. It's actually on our front door. This is a politics-free zone, so we nip it in the bud if anyone starts
That's
talking
right.
about all that crap. Because veterans' causes are generally bipartisan.
yeah, I think, if you look historically, I think veterans bills and omnibuses and whatever you want to call them, like you said earlier, veterans causes and veteran related things are, held pretty sacred, right? Doesn't matter right wing, left wing, that doesn't matter. We're going to take care of the folks that wrote a blank check. They didn't go to war for Republicans. They didn't go to war for Democrats. They went to war for American citizens. They signed up to serve the country, not a political party.
And so there's some anger about some of the funding decisions that are being made. The House in Minnesota put forth a proposed budget which cut $10 million from homelessness, veterans homelessness efforts. And their explanation was that they wanted to pivot towards preventing suicide and not so much on the homelessness issue, which if you listen to people in town, there's only one county left in Minnesota before functional zero, before veterans homelessness is declared over in the state. It would be the fourth state in the nation to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure whether that number's valuable or not. I don't know. I'll let other people worry about that. But I just heard something weird in my headphones.
It happens frequently, but luckily for you, the listeners, I don't think it comes through on your end. So if you ever hear us just take a long random pause, it probably comes out fine, and we're overthinking it in our heads, and or our OODA loops are just so fast, it ends up coming out fine, but it feels like an eternity on this side of the microphone.
Makes you sound intellectual, right?
It does.
I'm
yes.
taking a break to formulate my thoughts.
Long pause.
So you can take in what I have said, process it. So, it's a bummer that veterans' causes are no longer sacred cows, both federally and at the state level. But we have to fight for our benefits just like any other constituency does. So.
Well, absolutely. And I too, if you look at it, majority of what's in place now wasn't there for our Vietnam veterans. They had to do a ton of fighting and a ton of work to get things where they are now. And it's up to us. It's up to this generation of veterans to let their voices be heard and keep up that fight, right? You can't just rest on your laurels because it's, hard times create hard men create good times create weak men create hard times. So it's cyclical. I'm not saying that anybody's weak by any means, but it's going to go like that. And I think it's just time for the current generation of veterans to stand up and identify themselves as veterans and continue the work that our forefathers did before us.
Well, I think it creates a time for newer veterans and even older veterans to step up and take those leadership roles at a smaller level, knowing that kind of blanket cover for us to get the things we need, or, that greater support isn't there. That gives us a time to really dig into how do we support each other at a level that is meaningful to the folks to our right and left. And if we can do that and take that step into leadership roles and make that impact, it's almost, in my mind, can be more beneficial, because we can start that microcosm and then grow from there, and it seems more stable rather than, it's really nice to have a blank check to be able to take care of the things we need. But at some point, somebody has to step into that leadership role.
And that was shown pretty well, I think, it's called Veterans Day on the Hill, which is an annual event where veterans show up and interface with their legislators, and obviously it carries some weight. The governor showed up, and several other prominent politicians showed up, and so there is some. But when you look at the crowd, to your point, Amos, when you look at pictures of the crowd, it's pretty old.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon in the veterans community of who shows up to everything from a Legion meeting to a thing at the Capitol. It's kind of the same people all the time doing all the things, and once those people go away, I don't know. It doesn't bode well for the future, because it creates a vacuum where it may not be filled. This may be the generation that does not fill that vacuum, and we have to, because going back, even World War I, like DAV and American Legion, VFW, they were all started 100 years ago, and you say, oh man, they're old, ancient organizations. But a lot of it came out of how World War I veterans were treated, and what they called the bonus army. They had veterans camping out on the White House lawn because they were not getting the benefits they were promised, and then they actually sent Douglas MacArthur out there to forcibly and physically remove them, which he did, and started a lot of the advocacy efforts that we see today. But it takes it's a constant passing of the baton, and I'm not sure we're going to grab it.
Yeah, that's been a big thing, since I got off active, back in 2012, transitioning into those organizations for veteran support where, the Legion, the VFW, the DAV, they were always trying to find that next guy to step up into those post positions. And there was so many of the OEF vets who were still just trying to live life that wasn't on the forefront of their mind to step into those leadership roles and to take that baton. But we're going to start feeling that pain pretty soon when it comes to our not necessarily a loss of benefits, I don't think, but that advocacy and that voice for sure is gonna get lost if we don't again step into those leadership roles and take up that position where our voice is heard, and not necessarily as better than or more needy than the next guy, but as a part of the whole system,
Right.
Well, and I will say too, if there are any Legion members out there, I think they have taken a very dynamic approach to modern day recruitment. I don't know, sitting there scrolling Facebook, you see some of the ads that they're putting out about joining the Legion. They are absolutely targeted at the Amos and myself's generation of veteran. Tom, you've probably been a part of some of the organizations for like 4 decades by now.
Yeah, thanks for calling me old.
You're welcome.
I was going to let it go, but okay.
But that's just it, just like we here at ETS, you talked about the state shifting focus to veteran suicide. We're very much taking that into our own hands as well. But the Legion has done a lot. They're not just talking about, we're getting older. They're doing something about trying to get younger. And that's been really cool to see. I'm not a member of the Legion, but no reason I'm not. I picked the VFW and got involved there, and I haven't branched out, I guess, no pun intended, to the other service organizations out there. So
right. And DAV made the same pivot, and I was actually working for them at the time, where they changed from Disabled American Veterans to DAV and modernized their logo, modernized their colors, to try and bring in that younger veteran. And I don't know whether it's worked or not, but
I think we talk a lot about meeting veterans where they're at, and I think that's a lot of the shift that I've seen. Especially like you said, Eric, with the Legion and stepping outside of the normal, clubhouse atmosphere, and getting out to where those OEF vets are, whether it's youth baseball, things like that, making those community events more of the meeting places for us.
Yeah, and I get it. It's hard too, right? Like Amos, you and I are very fortunate to, work for an organization that supports the cause that we're passionate about. Totally get it. Not every Afghanistan, Iraq vet is going to be able to work with veterans for veterans. They still got to make a living, right? Support the families that they've created. But, VFW, my VFW meeting anyway, it's at 7:00 at night on a Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's why our demographic is a little bit older too, is because we are open during typical working hours. But again, if it's something that's important to you, you got to find a way to do it. And if veterans quit being important to veterans, that's not going to be good.
right. If we start to individualize and not come together in some way, shape, or form, I'm not sure what that future holds as what that looks like, but got to stick together, just like any other group of human beings with a common background.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that I like is, we talk about being part of this organization where, we have our opportunity here. There are more than just these larger group organizations. I mean, when I was back at Bemidji State, I was part of the Veteran Student Coalition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually worked in their office just as a peer support guy. And those are, like I said, those local microcosms. I think if you want to help in whatever way to try to seek those opportunities, where you can make that kind of impact, whether it's just showing up and helping a guy with his math test or, those technology assists. And it doesn't have to be some grand thing. Right?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. You don't have to be standing in front of, the federal House or Senate or whatever. Like, I would be hard pressed to think that any initiative went right to the federal level, right? It's like you've been saying, it starts in the local community. And just because it's not a bill being passed, you can still make a difference in the veteran community in your own community.
Well, and make your voices heard too, right? Because one becomes two becomes many, right?
And it becomes a dull roar becomes a deafening scream. Yeah.
And so, the question becomes, what is the right way to go forward in the future? What do a new generation of veterans actually want? You can come up with all the plans, all these grand schemes, but unless you figure out, from their mouth what they want, you're just going to be hoping something sticks to the wall.
Yeah, I know a lot of them are, they have reunions and they stay close together as people that they served with. But why does that have to stop at that boundary, right? Why can't it, how do we make that grow, right? Instead of just people that you served with. Well, now you're advocating for people in the same branch. Now you're advocating for everybody, right? That's. Don't get me on a soapbox or a high horse. The next thing you know, my truck will be wrapped in like. We'll get back to the vehicle wrap later. But it was one of the videos, I think, Tom, that you sent me. This guy, he talks about how do you turn a civilian into a sailor, a soldier, a Marine. Every branch has a creed.
Mm-hmm.
What's the veteran's creed? What is it that we are able to hold on to help? It's the identity piece, right? So I've been working on it a little bit. I don't have it in front of me, and it's nowhere near a finished product yet, but I am are the two most powerful words that somebody can say.
Sure.
I am this. I am that. Right? So as soon as we can start to harness the pride when I said I am a Marine, now I am a veteran, I think that starts to put ownership and onus back on the folks that are just kind of sitting there, not necessarily in their own glory, but not doing anything to help further veteran causes.
Well, and I think that's one of the things like I've talked with you guys about before, where it's taking that stigma away from what does it mean to be a veteran? We talk about being a disabled vet. It's like, does that mean that I'm less than or that I'm needier than other people? And it's like, no, it just means I have a greater skill set to offer.
Yeah, it's just like
I have some experience to bring to the table that might not be readily accessible to a lot of other people.
Yeah, it's a title that is no different than saying you two have brown hair. Well, Tom, you're kind of gray, and I have blonde hair.
I prefer silver.
Adult blonde. But yeah, disabled, whatever, combat, wartime, peacetime. Who gives a flying pig? You're a veteran. You served your country.
Well, I think forming that identity in a way that is meaningful in what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a veteran, I think it's, again, this is my personal opinion, that it's important that we take those leadership roles because we have an experience that isn't available to a lot of other people. I mean, I can think of, and I actually just reconnected with a guy that deployed with to Africa in 2020, and he's been coming up through the fire department out in Colorado, and wants to know what he can do to kind of form that more veteran-centric organization there, because he has an experience from a different place using different tools that he can offer a different perspective and that's just value added in every organization that we come to. I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's, just showing up on time in the right uniform and with the right attitude
Yeah.
to, being able to look at something as solution oriented
Yeah.
rather than just this is a problem and it's somebody else's, football. It's something that we can pick up and run with.
Yeah. I think too, with take a job description, for example, I think, and I could be totally off base, but I'm just brainstorming, spitballing. Like, I think a lot of folks, when they're not, I guess, tied to their military service anymore, they try to fit the mold.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to rock the boat. They just like, hey, this is my job. This is what I'm going to do. And I think a lot of that awesome beneficial experience gets put on the back burner.
Sure.
Just because they don't want to be looked at differently, or they don't want. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stigma
Stigma
of coming of being a veteran, and I think we've pretty much, well, maybe not, but I think we've taken a good few chunks out of the stigma wall of mental health.
Yeah.
I think that's come a long way, especially since your time. I'm not trying to call you old, but certainly
It's like the third time.
previous generation of veteran. Like, let's start. Somebody's got to start somewhere. I'll start right now. You don't have to fit a mold. You are who you are, and your unique quirks and experiences and the life that you've lived bring incredible asset, incredible resource to wherever you are.
Yeah. And my deployment in 2020 was eye-opening to me because I was deploying with a National Guard unit that hadn't deployed outside of the country in a long time. And so, being my second deployment, I was kind of understanding what we were going to go through. But we had a lot of 18, 19-year-old kids in the Guard, and I say kids, but that had never been outside their home state, let alone their country, right? Like, to experience something so drastically different, and then to be able to come back and be like, I can overcome so much more knowing that these things don't hold me back, like not having X equipment, not having X supplies or X support. But you have to be willing to step into that instead of, shying away from it and being scared. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so when it comes to how do we look at the solutions to the problems plaguing veterans today, I think we get caught up in, like, with the stuff with the governor and the House and all that. We get caught up in the situation where we're looking to government to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake. I'm biased, obviously, but I think nonprofits have a much clearer view of what's actually going on in the community than government, especially, legislators, elected officials. There's grandstanding there. There's a lot of constituencies that they're looking at. There's been a thing with these, call them claim sharks, which are non-accredited people trying to basically promising veterans the world for a fee, which is illegal, but it's done, and now it's being brought before the legislature, and it's not working out. But the education should be done. Maybe every third Saturday should be a part of that education. Like, are we communicating to veterans, like, you don't need to pay for someone to get you your benefits?
Right.
They're yours.
Right. They are your benefits. All you need to do is get plugged in. Everybody, and so I was thinking about this at the event I was at on Saturday. VSOs have a terrible name. That just the reputation, if you say VSO, veterans are like, oh, they're worthless. I am telling you right now, the man that my table was next to, the Carver County, Mark, I think is his name, Mark or Matt. Sorry if you're listening. I forgot your name already. But I've seen a significant shift there too. It's no longer just somebody filling a state job. a lot of times it is a veteran in that position. It is somebody who gives a crap about your benefits, which, hello, are also their own benefits.
Yeah. Right.
So they are going to do the legwork for you. Yes, there's still stuff that you are going to need to do, and people need to understand that. Nobody is going to give you anything. You still have to do some modicum of work for it, whether it's filling out a piece of paperwork and getting it back to that VSO.
Making an appointment.
Yeah, right? Like, there's still a little bit of work that we have to do, but I'm telling you, the reps that are out there now, and I'm privileged enough to get to see it. You know, the events that we go to, you can just see the support network that's out there, and because we're at every one of them, it just continues to get ingrained. Whereas maybe a veteran gets to 1 or 2 a year. But the people that are out there that want to help. They want to be there. They want to do their job for you.
Yeah, and I think, talking about places that veterans can really make a difference, finding those veteran service opportunities, those mentorship positions are a huge asset. Being justice involved and being in Veterans Treatment Court, I see a lot of that. And where you talk about the VSOs, the one up in Anoka, I mean, we've got guys who will leave the courtroom and go straight over to their office and just do a walk-in to start that journey. And to have an office that is willing to do that and prepared to do that is a huge asset. And that's not something that's necessarily just provided in the funding side of it. It's actually the drive of the veteran who's sitting on the other side of that desk.
Right. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm glad you said prepared. That's another thing that we need to understand. There are oftentimes 1, 2, or 3 of them. And how many veterans are in Hennepin County?
54,000.
So let's think about how skewed that number is. If you expect a VSO to drop everything they are doing and solely work on your stuff, like, we got to have that in perspective too. Like, oh, it's taking them 2 weeks to call me back. Yeah, because the other 13 days they've been calling all the other 200 veterans that are on their caseload.
I had days as a service officer where I literally returned 100 phone calls.
Yeah, so let's cut these guys some slack too. Like, they are working their tails off for us.
Well, and again, respecting that side of it, where, like you said, most of these VSOs are now veterans, and they've been on the other side of that. And part of their commitment to that position is having had a bad experience. I mean, how many times have we talked about, the stigma that the reputation the VA has that doesn't fit our experience, right? They don't care, they don't meet my needs. Where I have had nothing but good things to say about the VA, in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. These things change, the people change, and you've got to give them the opportunity to do that. And if you feel like there's an opportunity for change, that's your place to have a voice. You know, we are privileged enough to be able to speak up at these times and say things that need to be changed.
Yeah. Well, it's like my therapist at the vet center. I asked him, I was like, Mike, why do you do what you do? He's like, straight up, it's because I was in your chair. Yeah. I was in the other chair before I was in this one. And yeah, the voice piece. And I think we talked about it when Christy was on the show, but I mean, it seems grand, but like, run for city council or get involved in your community, whatever you want to call it. Cities have their own little governments and organizations. Yeah. Like,
I mean, we talk about one of our previous graduates of the cohort right now as a member of a sitting, is it senator or representative? Senator. Part of their veteran, outreach.
Yeah, I almost applied for it, and I forget even who it's for.
Oh,
it's not Amy Klobuchar.
No, it's Congresswoman Craig.
Yes, Angie Craig. That's right, Angie Craig office. Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's the higher level, but those positions exist at every echelon.
Yes, city, state, federal. Yeah, absolutely.
And if you don't feel like you have something to contribute, one, you're fooling yourself. Everybody's got something to contribute, whether it's just an opinion, respectfully, of course. or if it's the act of going out there and soliciting those other opinions.
Well, I think veterans, we sell ourselves short too.
Yeah.
Like I used to see, there was a flyer I read one time. I tried to break down like, hey, this was their military service. What does that translate to in the corporate world? And it was like, it didn't even break down like the level of enlisted. It was just like enlisted are good for general labor and, following rules. And officer was good for, management material or whatever. Like the three of us here could run circles out of a boot tenant, just completely have his head spinning while we're, operating at max capacity. So don't sell yourself short either. Just because you don't have a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, put your name in the hat for something. Just have a killer resume and have a killer interview, and those barriers that you are perceiving are not quite as high as they are in your head.
Yeah, you're setting up your own barriers for achieving something, right? And I had a mentor who put it in perspective for me is like we'd write our NCOERs, our evals for the next level of promotion is like we're over there trying to find the things that were stellar about what we did when half the time what we really needed to look at was the fact that, hey, we went to the field and didn't break anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a huge accomplishment, right? The fact that there are no injuries that happened while I was in charge.
Yeah.
And if you've served in the military for any period of time, eventually you've been in charge of somebody.
Well, or equipment.
Or equipment.
Like one of my old platoon commanders put it to me. I was like, sir, I'm having a really hard time writing this. He was like, how much equipment do you think's out here? I was like, I don't know, a couple $1 million. He's like, okay, were you not, the NCOIC of a couple $1 million worth of equipment that didn't get broke, stolen, or lost?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I guess. But like, I'm thinking like we didn't kill any bad guys, we didn't secure any objectives, but like we got $2 million worth of comm equipment that made it back in one piece.
Yeah, and you forget the basic point of, one of the basic tenets of our mission set is to accomplish that without loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can go out there, manage ourselves, and then manage the guys to our left and right in a way that brings everybody back
mm-hmm.
in pretty much the condition they left in,
mm-hmm.
like that's a success.
Yeah.
That's a huge undertaking to actually do.
Yeah. And honestly, that's how I wrote my resume. Yeah. When I got out of the Marine Corps and started looking for jobs, I took my most recent fit rep and I made it make normal people sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think training is the one thing that everybody sells themselves short on. Is like, how much do we cross-train each other? And the ability to translate that skill to an everyday thing is like, I can educate the person to my left and right on what it is to do the thing that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can take the lesson that I'm going to be given and then adapt it into training.
Like when I was at Shields, I was never in charge of folding clothes, but I still do it here. Like if the hanger doesn't make a question mark, I'll flip it around. And that's not even anything that I did other than one time I got trained on it.
Right.
It was, hey, these should look like a question mark. If they're the other way around, flip them. Like, okay, easy. Right. But now it's what I do.
And I think, one of the things that we miss out on is as veterans, we really enforce how do we review, the after action reviews, right? How do we look at how something that we implemented, how did it actually turn out? And where can we identify those things that needed to be, improved upon, or what do we need to sustain? And that's, when we talk about how do we serve our communities, we need to be very open to reviewing those things.
Yeah.
And, when we talk about, well, there's a shift in the funding levels at what our priorities are going to be. Priorities of work change all the time. And I think it's important to be adaptable to that and to attack each place of that with as much zeal as we have.
Yeah. And I think the example of the greatest generation after World War II, they came back and they got involved.
Yeah.
They raised families and they started businesses but they also stepped forward in public service and became presidents and became senators, and representation for veterans in Congress is at an all-time low, historical low.
Mm-hmm.
And You know, it's, it seems like only Navy SEALs run for office. Seems like everyone who runs for office has been in the SEAL
but that's
team.
exactly it, right? Because even military members are like, well, okay, you're a SEAL, you were a Raider, you're a badass, right? But why do we sell our own experiences short?
Right.
Like, it's still less than 1% of the population of the United States serves in any sort of capacity.
Well, and the SEALs don't get there unless the plane flies, right? Or the boat drives.
Right.
And their gear gets there.
And they get to do the sexy stuff that we all call it, but like everything needs support. The United States military would not work how it does without every piece of the puzzle that it has.
Right.
And that's the bottom line.
And I think that transitions into something that I'm really passionate about, because I'll get folks come in next door, and you know, especially like when there's guard weekends and stuff, and they're like, well, I'm you know, a veteran, or I'm still serving in the guard, but you know, I don't really need anything. And my challenge to them is, okay, if you don't need anything, what does the person who's on the other side of this need that you can bring to the table? Like, what is it that you're succeeding at that somebody else is struggling with? Your contribution to the whole is not just in what you need or what you're entitled to. It's what you can bring. And if you can, you know, join an organization, whether, and you brought up, you know, the senators and stuff like that, for however many senators there were sitting in office, there was probably, you know, 20 or 30 veterans down the chain from them who were supporting those, you know, being the advocates, going out and being the outreach specialists, and, you know, being those veterans liaisons that we see in a lot of those offices. So, you know, finding your niche that you're good at is something that we all kind of struggle with, but unless you're out there doing it, you're not gonna fall into it, you know.
It's not going to find you.
Yeah.
No.
It's not gonna be magic.
Right.
No.
You got to put your face out there. You know.
And when you get as old as I am, you start to realize that magic does not exist.
That takes every joke I've made off of me because you just said that.
You admitted to it.
There's no such thing as magic.
Lies.
When I was 49, I believed in magic.
Do you believe in magic?
You're a wizard, Daddy.
You're a wizard, Harry.
My 50th birthday, gone.
Done.
Yep.
No more magic.
Hair turned.
I think that's when Santa Claus died too, isn't it? Last year.
Well, that was 40.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Okay.
You know, I never did get to scold you for that April Fool's joke you pulled on us.
Oh, I got him. I got him. I think when Josh Geisey was here.
Yeah, you guys talked about that, but I never said anything. There was sheer panic when you actually mentioned like stepping back. Because I looked to Eric.
My
and
heart
I was
stopped.
like,
My
oh.
jaw was. I mean, my mouth was agape.
Like we got to step up.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. It's like I don't even know how to write a check. If that's a lie, I do. But
But I think that's the reason I bring that up, is I think that's something that holds a lot of us back, right? Is that fear of failure, that fear of the unknown. I wouldn't be in this position if I didn't feel like you guys were going to be there to hold me up when I was struggling.
Yeah.
You know, and as veterans, we do a really good job at that. I think.
Yeah.
At times where when we're struggling, we can hold each other.
Well, and it's like we realize when we're serving, like no plan survives first contact.
Yeah.
But then we come back to the civilian world and we have to have like all these ducks in a perfect row. We've never had to improvise, adapt, and overcome before. Like that has totally escaped our brain. Like we can do so much more than we think we can, than we allow ourselves to, than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, and MacGyver medicine was my go-to, right? It was like,
Oh yeah,
you got to be willing to try something different if you don't have the assets you need to make it happen the way the book tells you.
Well, yeah, and just like, David killed Goliath with a leather sling and a rock. Sometimes you got to figure out how to save veterans with a few rubber bands and a paperclip.
That's right.
So,
And it's an ongoing challenge to identify the needs and then to come up with the appropriate solution. It's kind of scary at times.
terrifying. Yeah.
You potentially have people's well-being in your hands when you're trying to do something like we do the Warriors Return.
Yeah.
And, just simple veterans who come in to every third Saturday just to hang out. I mean, it's just, you never know what that word is or that smile or what gesture is going to make someone, turn a corner.
Yeah.
And we're going to hurt themselves or something like that. So, so we have to support each other. The community, I worry about it because this could be the next greatest generation, and it doesn't seem to be coalescing that way. I don't know if it's technology fracturing that or what exactly is causing the rift or the gap. But the generation of veterans seems to be, they're not assimilating well necessarily into civilian life, but they're also not really staying together either. It's kind of an odd phenomenon.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's the paradigm shift that we have to have. Like when we were responsible for our brothers and sisters to our left and right. Now that we're out, we're still responsible for our sisters to the left and right. I think if we can collectively wrap our heads around that and realize that, we still have each other's backs and we still have to fight for each other. We just because we hung our M16 up doesn't mean we hung up our voice and our ballpoint pens to sign petitions and documents and
I'm a
pen letters.
Voice an unpopular opinion maybe, and that part of the problem that I see, I think, is that privilege that the generations that have come before me particularly have made it easier for me to step back because I do have a lot of benefits out there for me. I do have a lot of resources that I can access. But, my personal challenge is for everything that I get given, I put back out twice as hard.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, right, we kind of hang up that, well, I'm not responsible for anything anymore. I'm not in that life or death situation. Right. And not just as veterans, but I think as people, we really have to start holding ourselves accountable to the success of those folks around us. Not that we have to give everything up so that people around us succeed more than us, but that we can, bolster each other in those hard times.
Right.
Right. Be that resource for whatever it is. I mean, I don't know how many times I consider myself a pretty well-rounded Renaissance man when it comes to my talents and gifts, but there's still things that I come to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I call my dad and say, "Hey, what would you do?" We got to have those resources for each other, and that starts as veterans. We've got to take care of each other so that we can take care of those greater spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder what the wow, it's great when you can't find the word when you're doing a live podcast.
Wonder. What's in a wonder ball?
Insert old joke.
Zinger.
But veterans, like I said, like any other group of people, have to help each other, and we know how to do it better than a lot of other people, a lot of other groups do, because of our experience in the kind of forged in the fire type relationships you form, and then so we have to keep fighting for each other. And like I said, I think looking to the government for solutions is not where it is. I mean, the VA does what they do, and they do it well, and I echo what you said about the VA. VA in Minneapolis is fantastic.
Hands down.
Yeah.
But outside of that, veterans just don't seem to necessarily be connecting with each other, and I'm not sure why.
Well, and I don't know for you guys, but there's always that complaint with the top-down solutions, right? Where we're going to push solutions down from the highest echelon, and nobody's ever happy with those. Right. I don't know how many times we've been in a formation and somebody's like, "Oh, well, we're going to work till 1900 today instead," and it's like nobody's happy about that. Well, we need to make an effort at those bottom-up solutions, right? We need to start, instead of just bringing problems forward, we also need to start bringing solutions, and whatever those are, if it's just the smallest of actions, they can be the most important things.
That was the first thing that when I was a platoon sergeant, it was the first thing a fellow platoon sergeant told me. He was like, don't bring LT your problems, bring the solution.
Right.
And and again, that goes back to too, and here I am belaboring a point, but if the work was done how it was supposed to be done, first sergeant didn't make you wait till 1900, right? And so that, again, that's referencing to the work is on us to do it right, so we don't have to be at work until.
Yeah, and the more we can put our shoulders into those tasks and accomplish them in a way that, yields benefit, the more that it shows up in everything else that we do. The more that we can look around like this organization here and see that how much our relationships are supportive of each other, and seeing somebody walk in the door and seeing our interactions not just as playful but as full of joy is something that they can be like, oh, I want a piece of that. And I was having a conversation down there regarding faith. How do we push our faith into the greater community without causing discontent or strain?
Let me ram it down your throat.
Right. Well, it's like we go out there and we share our joy. So as veterans, I think we need to make an effort to go out and show the success that we have, and not, I guess, in an overbearing or like, look at what I did.
Right.
But as, hey, this is something I accomplished through hard work, through the support of others, and we can do that together.
Sure.
It's like being that proverbial lighthouse.
There you go.
For other veterans. You might be in a stormy sea, but I'm here on a rock, man. Let me guide you in.
Yeah. And that's not to say that light's not going to burn out sometimes, and you're going to.
Yeah, right. My bulbs need to be changed.
Right.
I know this.
There's a rough seas for all of us out there, right?
Yeah.
So we got.
But it's how long and how violent you let that toss you around.
And it's, I don't know if you guys have heard the phrase "semper gumby," right? Always flexible.
Oh yeah,
a few times, a couple,
one or two.
I mean that has been one of the things that keeps me a little bit sane. Is, every time there's a problem in front of me, most of the time it becomes a hardship because I'm expecting an outcome, and I'm so tied to that
expectation,
right? And like you were talking about how VSOs, oh, well, he's taking so long. It's like, well, when's the last time you offered to do something for them?
Yeah.
Like what more can you do in this marathon? And that's what a lot of people forget is these are not sprints, they're marathons, right? We have to be in this for the long haul, which means we have to prepare for that. We've got to be prepared to continue to support these efforts. And it can't be that Band-Aid fix of, well, I helped the veteran not kill himself today, but what are you doing for him tomorrow? What are you doing to keep him from that path so that, they can be that light for somebody else? That's how we grow those things. So keeping that in mind of just the spirit of that long haul and that commitment to doing a little better every day,
right?
right? Rather than I want to make some grand entrance.
Yep.
I think is what's something that is important for us to remember.
I don't think we're I mean, none of us here are here for the notoriety or the fame and fortune of it. But yeah, that's exactly it.
Krista is.
I think so.
She's always
She's always trying to pad her resume.
steal the limelight.
Yeah. And with that wonderful attack on a fellow coworker, I just there are ways to support veterans. One of the easiest ways is by supporting us here at ETS.
That's right.
You can find a list of ways to do that on our website, everythirdsaturday.org. You can give us a call at 952-356-5116, or you can text HOPE, which is, maybe people don't know that, but that's our mission statement here, is to foster hope and promote post-traumatic growth for veterans. So if you just text that word HOPE to 952-234-7234, you can support us that way as well. Don't even have to get up off the couch or turn the football game off to come down here and see us. Just
But I'd love to see you anyway. Come have a conversation.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's the best of all.
It really is.
And I have a sister-in-law that thinks it's very funny that some of my words, especially those that end in R, don't always finish.
Mm.
And so I told her, she listens to the podcast, and so I told her that I would say the word beer.
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 Yeah.
Let's go have a beer.
Because that's her favorite. So I just wanted to make sure I got that in there. It's not nearly as strong as it used to be.
Okay.
It was merciless in Paris Island. When drone instructors is
How
so
much
funny.
were you talking about beer in Paris Island, though?
Well, it wasn't beer, but it was water.
Water. Yeah. Well, that's like being from the Midwest in Iowa. You wash your clothes and you got to measure something. Yeah. I'm not from Iowa. I grew up, parents from Iowa, so I got that a lot. Got a lot of family down there.
Wash your laundry.
Yeah. Go wash your hands for dinner. Measure twice, got once. Oh boy, I think we've hit our cap.
Devolved into madness.
That's it. All right. Another one in the books.
See you next
That's all we
time.
got.
Thanks, guys.